Hi YouTube, it's Jonathan at the piano lesson. I don't know if you noticed, but today we have a new microphone to try out, which I just picked up, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then I probably will go back to my usual microphone. I love microphones. Microphones are fun. This is a very old microphone, dynamic mic, omnidirectional mic from Beyerdynamic, Bayer, a German company. And it's a reporter's mic, and it's very long. You look at this, how long it is. Look at that. And it's beefy, and it can take a lot of abuse. And you can let me know if you like this or if you like the lavalier mic that I typically use. I typically use an Audio-Technica mic. As chance would have it, I forgot the precise model number of this mic, but I will put it in the links for you. But it's kind of interesting. Dynamic mic does not use phantom power as opposed to the mics that do use phantom power, the condenser mics. Anyway, today I'm going to continue with my chord lesson. And last week we were talking about all the different possible types of chords that there are, even from just basic pure intervals, fourths and fifths, perfect intervals, to triads, to seventh chords, to ninth and 11th and 13th chords, and we learned alterations and extensions, and but we didn't really talk about how to play the chords, so it sounds like musical and stylistically correct, and it works on the keyboard. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to switch back now to my other mic because I'm going to want to move around. All right, let's switch back here. And we're back with my typical lavalier mic. That'll be a fun little audio test I'll listen to later. Okay, and you'll be happy to know I have a good marker, and I cleaned my erasers and my whiteboard. I have a little system. I have two erasers, and you kind of just run them under the sink, put a little detergent there, and you can kind of just use one to wash the other, and then you can take a paper towel and just kind of dry it out. And then every now and again, it's good to take a little, very mild cleaning solution and clean your whiteboard so it's really white. Yes, white. All right, so let's start with triads. There's three things I like about triads. Dun-dun-dun. Anyway, let's get our bird's eye camera here and talk about the triads. So triads, and I really apologize for that handwriting, but if you can read it, I'll give you $1. So right there's I'll make our staff. Okay, and C, E, G, right? That's our root position chord. And I'll try, by the way, for those of you who know these things, and I will, you can fast forward and get to the really complicated stuff, right? But here you have a triad that's in root position. If you move the C up here, right, then you get an inversion. Now that's called first inversion, right? And then if you move the E up top, you get second inversion, right? So you have C, E, G, E, G, C, and G, C, E. And it's expressed like that with a slash, and like that also with a slash. So E is the lowest note of the chord, that's the bass note. G is the lowest note of the chord, and that's the bass note. And if we were in the key of C, let's say, and we were using figured bass, you would express that as 1, or first inversion 1, 6, or second inversion 1, 6, 4. And you do that because This interval is a sixth, and this interval is a fourth. Okay, this interval is also a sixth, but this is not a fourth. This is a third, and we don't need to express that explicitly. Now, you say, well, I know that. That's super easy. I mean, well, let me show you something that you might not quite be aware of, because people do practice their triads, okay? And you take each triad and minor, right, and diminished, right? And you practice all your triads, and you practice them in block chords, and you practice them as broken chords, right? And you can even practice them as arpeggios going up. There's just any number of patterns, and there's all kinds of books on that subject. But what we don't talk about as much, and I think in many ways is even more important, is these are close position chords. If I play that chord down here, it's not going to sound so great. But if I take that middle note and move it up here, that's an open position chord, and that sounds beautiful. So you should practice those in open position as well. Here's first inversion. Sounds a little better, but that's much clearer. And this are, okay, and if I open position, take the C, right? So nice to hear, right? Much more interesting than, you know, right? That has its place, but both are important, okay? So open and closed position, minor, right? Diminished. That's an interesting sound. Interesting sound. I mean, the characteristic of the chord changes. All right, so that would look like, if you're writing it out, you have your root C, C, E, what are we doing here? That's not an E. C, E, there's some water on the board, and that's why it's looking weird. C, E, G. You can't win, you know, you just can't win in life. You do your best, try to put your best foot forward, and I'm going to have to dry this board up and start again. And maybe I'll even wipe my, oh yeah, my eraser's really wet. Ugh. Yeah, these erasers take a little time to dry out. I didn't give it a lot of time to dry out. So, bass clef, C, E, G, C, E, G. That's way down here. If I take this E and I bring it up an octave, and I put it up here, okay, and we get rid of that, all right? So we have, right? And again, you know, you can tell the octaves. This is a line, this is a space, right? So I know that if I'm going to go up an octave, I need some kind of a space note, right? So there's my E up here, but that's what that would look like, all right? G, E, C would be the other one, and E, C, G. E, C, G, G, C, G, E, C, all right? So that's that, right? And this is that, right? Right, yeah, that's what we want. Yeah. Right, and then we have, right, and then we have this, right? And then, oh, just a minute. Yeah. I probably would want to do. I'm gonna change one thing right here real quick. I'm just gonna change that for a moment, and because we'll do E, right? E, C, G. Right? And then G, E, G, C, E, C, G, E, C, G, right? And this is, yeah, C, G, E, C, G. It's a little confusing. G, E, C. Okay, so those are our three different iterations of open position chords. Okay, let's get on to the seventh chords, because you can do effectively the same thing with the seventh chords. If you have, you know, let's just make like a dominant seventh chord. Right, that's pretty low. Yeah, I probably wouldn't typically play that. C, E, G, and B flat. That's C7. Okay. Good idea. Take the middle notes, bring them up here. Right. So E would be up here, and G would be here. Still C7. Okay. But you would just take the middle notes, okay, and you'd move them up an octave. Works with a minor chord, that's D minor 7, minor 7, major 7. That's not quite as nice, the major 7 in that octave in this voicing, but dominants work real well. Minor, you have to use your ear. Minor 7 flat 5. All of those, you know, work really nice as open position chords. Or you don't even need the fifth necessarily. You can play 3 notes. That's very common to hear. And practice your diatonic 7th chords like that. Right? That's a nice sound. And you can fit all that in one hand. And that's kind of like how Art Tatum would play. Now, so those are called, I call them shell voicings, right? Shell because this is the outside of the chord, right? You're taking the middle part of the chord and you're moving it up an octave. So those are our shell voicings. And I'll go over these again and, you know, kind of give you some other examples, but this is just a kind of quick overview. Ninth chords are 13 chords. Let's say, typically when I say C7 as a jazz musician, I don't usually play C7. I play C13 more typically. And what I mean more specifically is I play C7 with an added ninth and a 13. Now, the voicing that I would probably use for that is one of 2 voicings. And these voicings are a bit abstract. I call them rootless. Someone else might call them rootless too. Rootless. These are rootless voicings. They're rootless voicings because there's no root. So for instance, here's a voicing I would use for C7. Now there's no C in there, okay? If I take these 2 notes and I move them up here, that's C7 as well. And those are the 2 common ways that I would voice a C7 chord. So let me show you what that looks like. Right, so the two rootless voicings for C, well, let's just say C13, okay? The 2 voicings that I would typically use, E, right? A, B flat, and D. Right? So that's and then the bass player, they would be playing the C down here, E, A, B flat, and D. All right. This is the root. That's the 3rd. That's the 13. That's the 7, and that's the 9. Now, the A in the key of C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why wouldn't I call it a 6 rather than a 13? Because it functions like a 13. It has a dissonance, and there's no root within the vicinity of it, really. I mean, the root's down here. That's really the sound. So that's the first way I would do it. The other way typically, and I call this close position. I call that a close position just because it's close. They're more close together. You have the second in between, and this is a seventh on the outside. All right, this is from E to D. All right, that's a seventh. That's a minor seventh, and the inner interval here, the A to B flat, that's a second. That's a minor second, actually. They're both minor intervals. So the other voicing, and I'll probably have to use ledger lines for this, but B flat, okay, D, E, and E, A. B flat, D, E, A. All right. So it's the 7th, 9th, 3rd, and 13. And it sounds like that. Now, from this position, from these, I call this open position. I guess I just call it open position because this interval is also a 7th, but it's a major 7th, and this is also a 2nd, but that's a major 2nd. And it just sounds more open to me. What can I say? I mean, this one kind of closes in on itself. The 3rds down here, the 3rds up top, which almost functions as a 10th. So again, when you see as a musician, when you see C7, that's typically what you do. One of the two options that you do. And I have plenty of videos on that. Now, from that position, you can change some of the notes in the chord. You can alter the notes in the chord. So very often when we see C7 again, we're playing a 9th, we're playing a 13. You can put those in parentheses with a comma, and let's just say again E, A, B flat, and D, right? So E, A, B flat, and D, right? You can take the 9th and raise it up a bit, or lower it. That works. Or you could even take the 13 and move it down. That would be a sharp 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and raised 5th. Anywhere in this vicinity, you can manipulate the chord. That's a nice voicing. E, that's sharp 9, sharp 5. But my point is, if you know this voicing, you can get around and manipulate them. Same with this. Flat 9, sharp 5, sharp 9. I don't know if I'd put the E necessarily. Da, da. You could resolve it to that. You have to use your ear. Da, 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 da. You could have a nice moving line. Da, 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 da. So you play the chord, and then you hear ba, da, 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 da. That's a nice little effect, right? It's some counterpoint in the playing, so the playing's not so static. That's another aspect of making chords. I'm just going to have a little sidebar here about what are chords. Well, I kind of half-jokingly say there's no such thing as chords. And I say half-jokingly because we know there is such a thing as chords. But you never want to lose sight of the fact that the notes in the chord are really melodic. They're representative of melodic lines, that we kind of take a snapshot in time, of a melodic line. And at any given moment, we can say what those melodic lines are doing. If you have 4 notes, well, there's 4 melodic lines. There's 4 singers, there's 4 saxophone players, whatever that is. And as pianists, especially in the beginning, we tend to play or conceive of chords as just like we play them with, like we're wearing a catcher's mitt. We just sort of stomp them out like we used to do as kids. We used to make these paintings with sponges or potatoes, right? Or the sponges with the fall leaves, and you splash it on the paper. But there's more to it than that. And if you listen to any really good pianist, they're thinking in terms of counterpoint. They're thinking in terms of moving lines. So they're thinking of, you know, la, da, 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 or la, da, 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 or even they're either even harmonizing. La, da, you know, they're harmonizing that line as you go, but rather than just playing a chord and sitting. Now that's fine too. It functions rhythmically rather than melodically, but that's some more nuance in the chords. Okay, now I want to talk about an interesting aspect. You know, I was mentioning last week that you can conceive of chords as combinations of triads. So there's really, I think of there only really as three main sounds. There's major, minor, and diminished, and maybe augmented. But you can create most chords with just combinations of major, minor, and diminished chords, and they'll kind of share notes that kind of dovetail together. And of course, it doesn't necessarily solve your voicing problems, right? But thinking of like C, E, G, C7 with an added ninth, you know, that chord can be thought of as C major and E diminished and G minor, right? So that chord is C major and E diminished and G minor, right, all together. So this is C, E, G, right? This is E, G, B flat, and this is G, B flat, D, right? That's C7 with an added ninth, okay? And you see how they share notes, E and G and E and G, right? Or over here, G and B flat, right? They share notes. So if you learn triads, right, that's a really good way to understand chords. Now, you can create more complex chords just by thinking of triads. For instance, if you play a D chord with C in the bass with D major, right? That here you have a ninth and a sharp 11. Right? Much easier than, now I'm not playing the seventh, just so happens I'm not playing the seventh. I could, if I want to, that would sound like this. Or if I set dominant chord, right? I mean, that would be, you could do C7, let's say, right? This is C7, and then add the triad on top. The triad is the ninth, it's the 11, and the 13. And the bottom half is the root, third, fifth, and seventh, right? So that's a kind of a quick way to notate it. Notice again the horizontal line as opposed to making a slanted line. It really wouldn't be the same. Well, it would look, it just wouldn't make any sense anyway. Remember, the slanted lines we typically use for inversions, or sometimes we use them for what we call slash chords. So similar kind of concept. For instance, another way I could notate that is I could say a B flat major 7 with C in the bass. That's a slash chord. And so you have the C in the bass. Actually, I didn't include the F sharp this time, but I'll do this. Let's do that. It's very similar. So here we have the root. The roots here: 7th, 9th, 11th, 13. That's the same as C. I would really probably write it more like C11, but it's C7 with an added ninth, 11, and 13. But if I see this, I kind of know more how to voice the chord. You know, just so I go, oh, here's a B flat major 7, and I play C in the bass. You hear like Earth, Wind, and Fire play this. You know, that's kind of beginning of Earth, Wind, and Fire tune. Or I could even get rid of the top note. So I could get rid of B flat, the major 7, and just write B flat. I might even if I saw that, boy, I have to dry out these dry out these erasers. They're really still have a lot of water left in them. If as someone with, dare I say, a bit of experience, I might in fact add notes. If I saw B flat / C, all right, I might play B flat major 7 over C. I might do that. Okay, literally that would just be this, but I could add the extra note up there too. You know, that this chord I would definitely call C7 with an added 11th. That's the, you know. And again, typically if I just write 11, you know, that typically means that you're going to have a 9th in there anyway, right? You're going to have whatever's below it, so you don't have to do that. But there's more than one right way to do that, right? I could do C7 with the added 11th, or I could even do C11, and I would probably put in the 7. Any of those. But this is the slash chord I was talking about. Looks different than B flat. Well, B flat horizontal line C, I mean, that's more like this. And I don't really want all those notes. I don't like the E and the G in there. It doesn't sound as cool and slick and nifty anymore. Listen to that. Just if I take those notes away and I add them, it's a totally different sound, really. So anyway, I think we kind of came to the end, but you get the idea. It's not just what notes you play, but how you play them. So having said that, I'm going to excuse myself, and if you made it to the end, God bless you. And if you didn't make it to the end, good luck. And we'll see you next time. This is Jonathan at the Piano Lesson, signing off, and be in touch. Bye-bye.